Hello folks, well, we've got a Uniden Uniace 100, and I've said in the comments section that I'd do one of these next. It's a set I bought for demonstration purposes. We've obviously covered the Uniden 100 before, and its audio line 340 counterpart, and also of course the realistic 2001, the realistic being my favourite version. There you go, it's just a personal preference. So whenever you get anything using the Uniden chassis, now they're 40 years old, the 4 capacitors, the 2 220 microfarad capacitors and the 2 470 microfarad capacitors need changing. So there's no two ways about that. If it works today, it won't work tomorrow. They started being dodgy 20 years ago. And strangely, they're really the only set where we've had dodgy capacitors en masse. So I'm not. We will power it up. It's my set. So I've got a brand new mic here. I've managed to find a second-hand power lead. Does that actually go in, and why not? Yes, it does. Has it got a fuse in it, or has it? It has the remains of a fuse in it, which is broken. So I'll go to the fuse department and get a new fuse. Okay. So we use 3 amp fuses. Most of the time you can use a 2 amp fuse. But with the newer radios being more power thirsty than the older ones, we've kind of standardised on 3. For business radio it's somewhere between 7 and 10 amps. So we'll connect this to our trusty crocodile clips so we can watch them short out. Bearing in mind the power supply is current limited. The initial test of 300 milliamps. There we go. We'll switch it on, and we're actually greasy with the display and everything. So it is actually not playing up on its capacitors, all they've been changed. So that's interesting. We're going to plug the PA speaker into the PA speaker, and the test instrument, all the equipment, into the extension speaker so we can look at it on the oscilloscope, and the synad meter. Some rust on the back, which I hope isn't inside. Bearing in mind these are 40 years old. Unlike the Cybernet sets, I mentioned the capacitor, the other thing is the irreplaceable phase lock loop chip. I can get them. I'd have to buy 100, and they'd want what would turn out to be £28 each, £26 each. You know, it's not going to happen, is it? I think they're going to be sat on those forever. That is knackered. That is missing. This did come off eBay and was sold as untested for parts, all that kind of rigmarole. I bought it solely as a demonstration item. I'm not going to take the final screw out yet. We'll do the tests. We'll do that first. So, one of the reasons I want to do this is we've had quite a few really high-end Yorks, kind of like newish boxed, and a lot of those have approached 0.2 microvolts or actually hit 0.2 microvolts for 12 dB standard. And yesterday we did the Harvard 428M, which is my favourite Cybernet 134 of all time. Probably the SMC Oscar 1 isn't far behind with its tiny stupid little meter, but a really good performer. And we got 0.2 microvolts on that and a full 4 watt output. So something I've always said is that the Uniden radios are nothing like as sensitive, and really anything under 1 microvolt is going to be acceptable on them. The squelch does work better, they tend to be better for bleed over, probably because they're less sensitive. But there you go. I have not done the tests. One day we will, but I've got to set up 2 signal generators, and until I retire in about 4 years, I don't think I've got time to do that. Wednesday's funeral, he was same age as me, like 61, 62. That's going to be fun, isn't it? Right. Let's plug the mic in. It does help if we plug the mic in. We'll probably end up selling this if we can get it working satisfactorily. It'll go out with a new mic, as in like this one. Right, so let's put picture in picture on, and we're on the low scale, so 3 watts is full scale deflection on the meter. Wow, it's well above that. It's doing 4.2 watts. So that's either out of balance or it's going to have to come down. It's doing 4.1 on channel 40. And it's doing 4.1 on channel 1. On low power, let's go back to channel 20, and it's doing 160 milliwatts. Back to full power, and the current consumption is 1.109. Deviation on this test set, for what it's worth, because it's not likely to be accurate with its dodgy capacitors and its deviation meter. Wallow. It says 1.8, but we'll check that properly on the test set behind me. I don't know if we're doing the VC on this. It depends what it looks like when I open it up. It hasn't been reluctant to transmit on 1 or 40, and they don't suffer from VCO snags. Whereas I do like to check the Cybernet sets. Right, frequency. Now, test gear's been on, what, 20 minutes? So it's not going to be as accurate as it can be. It'll be a good indication. 2779094. It will come up a bit as it warms up. There's nothing I can do about it anyway, because they're non-adjustable on this model. 2779094. It's a bit disingenuous me putting that in, because it's non-adjustable and it's going to look like half an hour later it's got better. Well, it hasn't. It's just that the gear's warmed up. But that's totally okay. No crystals to change. So let's have a look at the meter. When we key it up, knowing it's doing 4.2 watts, you can find the mic, and it's banging across to the centre of the red zone, which is correct. Meter lamp works. Let's check PA. I don't think it's adjustable on the volume on these sets, but just check. Testing 1 2, testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. It's a bit. I think some of the Maxcoms also don't have adjustable volume. You'd need to have one of those awful power Max with the volume wheel if you wanted to use PA sensibly, but not good. Right, receive. Dirty volume control. So we'll put 2779 something or other. Oh 9 27790 099 will do us because it's warming up all the time. Not 125 because that would be unfair to test the receiver at the correct frequency rather than the frequency it sets at. So let's just see what we've got. Switch over to the synad meter, move it from where the mice have put it to. So there's 12 dB, it's 0.42, which is very good. 10 dB, 0.35. I'll tell you what, this is better than most. It's 1. It's one of those, I'm between scales here. It says 1 on the first scale and it says 0.95 on the other scale. We'll give it the 1. Squelch. So there's no hard and fast rule on this, but I want it to be on full squelch. I'd like it to open at S9 equivalent of 100 microvolts. We're at 100 microvolts. Let's go to the attenuators and see what I'm doing. We're at 100. It's not opened. It's opening at 230. At least it opens. Let's return a signal generator to 0.3 of a microvolt, switch it to standby, turn the radio squelch to threshold. That one's cleaning this one. Switch the signal generator back on. No, that's not good. It's 1.6. So hopefully there'll be a bit of retuning around the receiver, especially the lower IF like 455, which will help with the squelch, which is that's derived from, and or the adjustment of the squelch so that the maximum is 100 microvolts will hopefully bring down this figure, because at the moment it would be chopping round scratchy corner when we test it at that. That's too high. So back to 100 microvolts, which is in the UK the S9 point, not to be confused with amateur radio where it's 50 microvolts. At the moment it's 1 millivolt, so it's really sluggish, and the switch has worked. Right, we'll get it opened up. One screw was left. There, I managed to do it. Nearly ended up having to cut a slot in it then, going across to the organ workshop. Okay, still got the back screw in. Good grief, I can't get this off. I think we're running this through the dishwasher. You don't want to have duff speakers on these because 16 ohms, and the square speaker is 16 ohms. If you put 8 in, it's going to destroy the amplifier, which is about a £20 chip. So it's a difficult situation if the speaker fails. So can we see any silliness? No. So we've got to change some capacitors in here. That has been changed. That's one of the ones that plays up, and that needs changing, which is one of the others that plays up. So I think we'll change all 4 just for peace of mind from my own point of view. But there doesn't seem to be any silliness or whatever going on in there. It all looks original, but it's obviously been tweaked up a bit beyond what's legal. So good. When we work on these, I use the realistic service manual. I don't think I ever had one for Uniden or Audio Line, and the realistic manual, they're really, really good. Don't want any sharpness just there. No, it looks really nice. Apart from that corrosion which has gone onto the bottom. I have to take the bottom lid off because of changing those capacitors. But I think what we'll do is I'll go and change those capacitors right now. There's a little tiny bit of corrosion. There's no corrosion on that lid at all. Good. So I'm back and armed with the service manual. What does it say? Yeah, it's supposed to be better than 1 microvolt for 10 dB synod. I mean, that is pretty bad, isn't it? Transmit power. 3.4 is its minimum acceptable. Right, so we need to do the VCO, and it's done on channel 40. And I've got the knobs in the dishwasher. Oh, that's difficult without the knobs. I don't see that many Unidens, so hello, been attacked by a mad microphone. Well, I can't remember either whether these are a floating chassis or not. So test point 1 is I seem to recall there's a resistor with no insulation on it, and so I think it's that one down there. Let's just see what it says. So looking at the smaller type of sets like the Audio Line 340, the Realistic 2001 and the Uniden 100, it's resistor 52, and if we go to the layout, and resistor 52 is between those two capacitors, so I was correct on this odd occasion. Just see whether we've got power on the yeah, we have. It's a negative chassis. So the idea is we're going to transmit, and we're looking for 3.5 volts. Look at that, 3.49. It's absolutely spot on. And then you adjust L17. We're not touching it. Then L18, which is there, they have you do that with an oscilloscope at test point 3, which is further down. Now we're not going to do that because the set's already working. But you know what? If you're building this in a factory, it's a factory level, to get the thing to start working with the coils in as manufactured position, you may well need to do what, as I say, with the test point 3 and looking for maximum on the oscilloscope in receive. We're not going to do that, but we're going to adjust that with the synod meter later on the receiver, because we can. Now I seem to recall, is that one on the transmitter? So just, they have you do the receiver first, which I think is bonkers, but there you go. 16, 15, yeah, 14, 13, 12 and 10, and then they have you adjust 10 to the correct power. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll go back to channel 20, so we're in the centre of the band, and we will dispense with the multimeter. One thing. I'll tell you what, while we're just doing other things, just let's look at the frequency now. So going to transmit 27,79114. Now everything's warmed up. So even though it's 40 years old, it's hardly out at all. It's a shame they didn't make it adjustable. So we'll go back to the main meter. So we need to be on the 30 watt scale. So now we're looking around there, which we are, because it's doing about 4.2 watts. And despite it being over power, we've got to make sure it's absolutely at the centre of the peak. To be honest, it's pretty good that. As it's warmed up, it's dropped to 4.1. Now that wasn't at peak, so it's now at 4.6. So now we adjust the power with this one and bring it down to 4, and we're tuning down, not up. And bearing in mind this is already hot, so the fact it's doing 4 when it's hot may be slightly over when it's cold. Within the guidelines of measurement. So now we'll look at channel 40. It's doing 4 watts. I could say 3.99. And on channel 1 it's doing about the same. So I'll tell you what, we'll go back to channel 20. And I'm just going to, because we're spot on the 4.1, I'm going to put it as like 4.01. So hopefully channel 40 is now 4, and channel 1 is also 4. Good. So our current consumption is now 975 milliamps. So although we've only dropped 0.1 of a watt off it, it's come down because it's tuned properly, so it's drawing less current. And although these were all correct, that one wasn't. So on low power, let's see what we've got now. It is adjustable on these sets. press low power. Yeah, so it does say they're all labelled. Low power is there. Could be a candidate for the service hole. And that's now 400 milliwatts, which is where it should be. And hopefully I'll put the other test set on behind me. I did. So we'll plug it into there and we'll get the deviation checked and set if necessary. So it looked to be around 1.8, 1.92, but I can't always be sure, as I said with that test set. Right, we're connected up. I'll put the appropriate glasses on and let's see what we've got. Wow, it's a little bit high, it's about 2.8. So is it somewhere around here? It is, it's there. Wow. There we go. So it wasn't scarily high, but enough to start cutting out on well-filtered radios. So now we're back onto this test set. Let's just see what it now says. Wow, it's reading wrong. It says it's 1.5 or something. Right, so when I was 7 and bought a soldering iron for the first time, after about a year the element burnt out. It was an Antex one, and I had to buy a second soldering iron to mend the first soldering iron because the element soldered in. So you think, oh, I only need one such and such, and you end up having to have two. So it was 2.8 kilohertz, and it's now 2.2 as an average with a 2.5 peak. So while we're on the transmitter, what does the meter read? Helps if we're on high power. It does need to come up a bit. It needs to be the centre of the red zone, and dropping it that 0.1 of a watt is enough for it not to be where it's supposed to be. There we go, it's in the centre of the red zone. Like most sets of this here, it's a relative power meter, so it's only true into a dummy load when it, like I've set it into the dummy load. If we put it on an aerial, it may just move like you're doing half a watt. It may swing across like you're doing a zillion watts, but it will still be 4 watts. It's just BS. But new sets have gone down a different avenue, and they're pre-programmed to read what the manufacturer wants them to read, even if you take the transistors out of the transmitter. So I think that's disingenuous, but they've all gone down the same path. The Midland 78 is still just about available as a new set in its current version, and that's been having different versions for 20 years, and that does still have a relative power meter. The current Midland lineup I wouldn't be bothering with. Right, could do better, I think, is the answer there. So let's put the signal generation on frequency, 20 seconds. It's warmed up, that's changed. And we'll just set it to 114. I'll just put that up on the screen so you can see what I'm doing. So there we are, 20. So I've deliberately got the signal generation off frequency because that's the frequency the radio's on. And if I put it on 125, it just could be lopsided. So that's the sensible thing to do. And when I say off frequency, it's so well within the tolerance. It's you know, you wouldn't be adjusting it even if it had a crystal, which you could adjust. Right, let's go to the oscilloscope and we'll do the detector. With an S9 100 microvolt signal, put enough volume on to get a decent trace on the oscilloscope, and we now need to adjust the detector, which I expect is there, because I've got the service manual in front of me. And it says, they say 200 microvolts, and that's fine, but my training is 100 microvolts. It will make no difference. I'll tell you what, just for the giggles, let's put it to 200. There we are, we're now at 200 microvolts, just like they say. Slightly out, so that's good. Okay, so now we'll go to the cyanide meter and we'll start a tune-up. Meter, the mice like moving, I'm sure. Just pop the volume down a little bit. It's L654321. Is that the order I think it should be? Six, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That isn't the right sequence. Whatever the manufacturer thinks, you need to be starting at the front end and working towards the other end. It's still come out about right, but again, we'll do it my way. See, that's got worse. We're trying to get the needle. We're trying to get the needle to the left. So it was spot on where it was. Very slight adjustment on that one. Possibly a tiny adjustment on that one. Definitely a slight adjustment on that one. Let's do these IF ones. So I'm going to put now a bit more signal on. Possibly a tiny adjustment on those. Again, because the squelch wasn't kind of how I wanted it, this is why I'm putting a lot of attention into that. So between the detector and the IFs, we hopefully have got the squelch to the sensitivity that I believe we need. Now I'm going to go back to that one, so we'll drop the signal again. And that was absolutely spot on. So although that's not part of the receive lineup, it's part of the VCO lineup, the easiest way to do it is use a cyanide meter rather than setting an oscilloscope up to test point 3. Okay, so we've now done that, so let's see whether we've got an improvement. Bring the clipboard back. So we are now at 0.42 and a bit for 12 dB. It's exactly where it was before. For 10 dB. .37. So marginally worse, but then I've got the detector right. And the phone's ringing. Home improvements. I said, on my church organist wages, I don't think so. I could do with spending £1 million on the place. Anyway, not going to do that on my wages. Just drop the volume a fraction. So we have, we were coming to 20 dB, weren't we? and 20 dB is bang on the 1 microvolt. I could say 0.999, it's 1. So it's exactly the same. But let's see what happens when we get the squelch adjusted. So squelch to full on the radio, and I want it to open at 100 microvolts. It isn't doing so, it needs adjusting. There's the squelch preset. So I'm going to put the signal. Let's put the signal generator attenuator on there. So whoever EYG is, Home Improvements, they shouldn't have phoned me because I'm on the don't phone list. Isn't that naughty? So that is minimum. So the minimum squelch it's doing. Sorry, let's start this again. I want it to open at 100 microvolts. It is opening at 1.6 millivolts. That was 2.3 millivolts. 2.3. It's 1.6 millivolts. Can't even read the scales. And the minimum squelch, so we'll park this at 0.3 of a microvolt, turn it to standby, and turn the squelch down and set threshold. So I set threshold, switch back on. Oh, it has done it. It's 0.52 microvolts. That's fine. So between adjusting the detector, which was slightly out, and just brushing up with the IF, I know it's not changed the figures, but it's made it right. And then popping the squelch sensitivity down has brought that where we want it to be. I don't like the squelch to go that high, but at least it does open. So that leaves us to put the S meter to 100 microvolts, where it was a bit tough before, wasn't it? It was it's showing 100 microvolts as about S5. So there's a preset for that. It says SM for signal meter. For some reason it was at minimum. So there we are with S9 set. Good. So we've got new capacitors, the 2 for the amplifier, the 2 in its one of its internal power supply, second one's in the VCO's internal power supply. Good, we're done. So all it needs, he says all it needs, is to put the lids on and put the speaker back on its case lid and find the knobs. So looking back at this, it wasn't faulty, it wasn't off frequency, deviation was a tiny bit high, you know, it was a working set. It's just now spot on, that's the only difference. So as we put this together, and I did check that I took the speaker off to put this through the dishwasher, and this corrosion is superficial and it doesn't affect the speaker. Not that I've heard it say anything yet. Just want to check which wire's which. It doesn't matter, but it's not that one. So that's our negative. Just which way the speaker cone's going to move. So we want the negative to negative, that's all I was thinking. It only really matters when it's something stereo, but I just like to get some of these things right. Put some different tones on. You know what? Let's swap them all for black ones. Now, my acquaintance and amateur radio friend Simon, who's at Holmfirth in Yorkshire, Holmfirth where they filmed Last of the Summer Wine, he runs a repair garage and they do Volkswagen, I think, primarily. Restorations and conversions and all that kind of stuff, and he's had made some proper brackets for these radios and also the bigger Uniden radios, so they fit the two audio line 340 341, they fit the realistic 2000 and 2001, and they fit the Uniden Uniace 100 and 200. So presumably the 200 will also fit the 400 CPT set. So, I'm going to show you those. I've got them in the car. He has those for sale. He's had these custom made. I supplied him with the brand new, because I got a new in a box realistic. And then he bought a set off eBay for stupid money with a bracket, just so he could send the bracket in and have it copied. So I'll show you that in a moment. We'll just get this on the aerial and discover that nobody's on. So I said the very important thing about these is to change those 4 capacitors. One of them had been changed on this already, but I changed it again. We'll turn the test gear off. One nano, Roger. Roger. Right, we'll do an on-the-air test later with that. I'll go and get these brackets, and I'll put the link to Simon's website in the blurb. So, Simon at Brickwerks, and there we are, Unit 3, Brickwerks, Woodhead Road, Honley, Holmfirth, West Yorkshire, HG96PW. So they've got a website, and they're offering the Uniden 100 bracket, which is the radio we've got in front of us. He sent me a couple of samples of each as a thank you for giving him the original sample, etc. That's very kind of him. It's punched, pressed, not drilled, slotted, and his absolute exact copy. And it's the same material as well, absolutely the same. And then the one for the realistic 2000, etc., the Uniden 200. Again, absolute. This one doesn't have, because it didn't on the original. And there's the original bracket, and this is an exact copy of that original bracket. Ours is 40 years old, and his is brand new. Have we got a Uniden 200? We probably have in the box of something. We have a chassis here, so it hasn't got the case on, but you can see, because of course it's the correct bracket for that. Is he taking the Michael out of the Italian burner brigade? So there you go, that is a heads up for that. He does that one at £7.42, including VAT, and he does the smaller one for a tenner, including VAT. So they're doable. So that's another thing done. So there you have it, the Uniden Uniace 100 with the capacitors changed, which play up and in lovely working order. Thanks for watching.